Hello all, welcome back to Editorial Analysis and Answer Writing Practice at 9 p.m. Friends, if you are watching this video series for the first time, then please watch my intro video on this initiative to know how to participate in this answer writing program. And the initiative is open to all, and you can find the intro video in the playlist. It's been 7 years since government introduced GST in India. So in this backdrop, several newspapers carried editorials which analyzed the impact of GST in Indian economy. So we will also discuss the impacts of GST from our UPSC exam point of view in today's editorial discussion. Friends, GST was introduced in 2017 July through a constitutional amendment, 101st constitutional amendment. Though it was introduced in 2017, but it was in discussion for a long time. For example, in the year 2000, Kelkar Task Force was recommending the introduction of GST in India. Since then, there are several attempts to introduce GST. However, as I mentioned, this GST introduction requires a constitutional amendment because this GST introduction is going to compromise the fiscal autonomy of the state as well as center. So because of this federal feature getting affected, which required a constitutional amendment, not normal amendment. We need a special majority in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and also 50% of the state should also say yes for this reform. So hence that required support in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and also in states, which happened only in 2017. That is why there was a delay in introducing GST in India. But however, the idea was there for a long time. All right. So we will discuss the impacts. We will look at the positive impact of GST. We will discuss the issues with respect to GST. Okay, one by one we will see. The positive impact. When we look at the first impact, this GST is actually addressing the cascading of taxes. That is, when a product is taxed more than once, then that will lead to cascading of taxes. Before that, friends, I have made a list of videos on the basics of GST. Okay, I will share those videos in the description. In our channel only, I have done a list of GST basics video. If you are not having a clarity on the GST basics, then you can watch those basics video and then you can come to this editorial discussion because GST is slightly technical, but still I'll make it simplified. So I was mentioning about the potential, right? So it addresses the cascading of taxes. When a product is taxed more than once, that is cascading effect. So before GST, during the sales tax regime, there was this cascading issue. The same product, when it crosses hands, it was taxed again and again and again. And eventually the product price will be more inflated. Now GST is addressing that problem. So the product price will come down. That is the first potential benefit. Second benefit. See, before GST, there were multiple indirect taxes. And each indirect taxes, the filing procedure was different in different states, different procedures. So the businesses were finding it difficult to cope up with these older tax regime. But GST is replacing or it is subsuming most of the indirect taxes. And entire nation, there is one GST and one tax rate. So the procedures are relatively simplified, that is improving the business ecosystem. All this is improving the ease of doing business. And the ease of doing business is improved, then you will find more investments. So because GST is subsuming most of the indirect taxes, and for one nation, one procedure, one tax rate, so that has resulted in more investments into India. More investments means more production means more GDP, more production means more jobs. So more employment opportunities, that is going to reduce the inequality, poverty, etc. And also GST has subsumed certain taxes like octroi, entry tax. All these are taxes on entry of goods into a particular state. It's an entry tax, as the name says. This tax will be levied by the states. When a good wants to enter into a particular state, then the state will impose tax. Now, because of this, the state borders, you will find a huge traffic, a lot of trucks, containers that will be waiting in queue for a long period because of the logistical cost was increasing, right? The transportation cost was becoming higher. Now, GST has subsumed that octroi tax, entry tax. So there is no bottlenecks in the state borders, no traffic jams in the state borders. So the transportation cost will come down, logistical cost will come down. When logistical cost comes down, the product cost will also come down. When the product cost comes down, it will become more competitive. Exports can also be improved. right? Lot of advantages we are able to see. Even for the government, GST has improved the revenues. When GST was introduced in the year 2017, the monthly GST revenue was less than 1 lakh crore. Today, in the April month 2024, the GST revenue has crossed 2 lakh crores. Year on year, we are able to see a 10 to 12% growth in the GST tax revenue. And also the tax base has improved. When GST was introduced in 2017, around 60 plus lakh GST payers were there. But now almost 1.4 crore GST payers are there in our country. The tax base is widening, the tax revenue is increasing, right? So there are a lot of benefits. But having said that, there are some issues also. What is the issue, sir? See, issue number one, the benefits of GST is not passed on to the consumer. Government, through a procedure called as tax refund, right? Through a procedure called as tax refund, please watch my GST basics to know what is this tax refund. Technically, it is referred as input tax credit. So, through this tax refunds, government is asking, see, this tax refund will go to the business players. But the refund is not to benefit the business players. The business players, they have to transfer this benefit to the consumers, right? Only when they transfer the benefit to the consumers, the product price will come down. Today, we are not able to see a big reduction in the product price because the business players, they are not passing on the benefits. When they do not pass on the benefit, that is called as profiteering. So profiteering is the first issue in GST. This profiteering has to be addressed. Right. The second issue is the multiplicity of tax rates. 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, and for gold it is 3%, and for semi-precious stones and rough stones it is going to be semi-precious metals and rough stones it is 0.5%. So multiplicity of tax rates, so that is actually slightly complicating the procedures. When compared to previous tax regime, GST is simplified, no doubt. But within GST, I am highlighting the complications. Now, every month GST collected has to be returned to the government. This is called as GST filing. Every month it has to be filed. Multiple tax rates in different format invoices has to be uploaded in the GST network. And this process is actually a little complicated, and this needs support of auditors. So small business players, because of this compliance cost, they are finding it little difficult to cope up with the GST. And also small players like MSMEs, when they want to get themselves registered under GST, the procedure is not so simple. We see a lot of rejections faced by the small entities when they go for GST registration. The procedure is not so simple. Right. Similarly, I was mentioning about tax refunds, right? Government on time, they have to pass on the refunds to the business players first. Only then it will be passed on to the consumers. But there's a delay in the refunds. The business players, they are finding it, there's a delay in getting back the refunds, and that is affecting the cash flows, that is affecting the businesses. Right. Similarly, if you look at a state level, as I mentioned, this GST was introduced through a constitutional amendment because it is compromising the financial autonomy given to the states. Before GST, the states were having the autonomy on certain taxes like sales tax, like entry tax. But now everything is subsumed under the GST, so the states' hands are tied. The states, they are not able to come up with new taxes. That is affecting their financial autonomy. And also, this GST is a destination based tax. Before GST, the taxation system was origin based. That means if a trade originates from a particular state, let's say there's an interstate trade between, let's say, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh. Seller is Maharashtra, buyer is in Andhra Pradesh. Now origin is Maharashtra. So in this trade, there will be a tax collected, right? The tax collected was going to Maharashtra because Maharashtra is the place where the trade got originated. Seller is from Maharashtra, right? But GST is now a destination based tax. That means in this trade, Andhra Pradesh will be getting the tax revenue because Andhra Pradesh is the place where the product is finally consumed. That is the destination. GST is a destination based tax. So what is the problem, sir? Manufacturing states. Manufacturing states, they are worried because of this. Because let's take Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, there is Hyundai factory. Now, this Hyundai factory is manufacturing thousands of cars. All these thousands of cars will not be sold inside Tamil Nadu. It will be sold to some other states also. So, in that interstate trade, previously before GST, Tamil Nadu was receiving the money. But now after GST, the buyer state will be receiving the money. So, because of that, the manufacturing states will face loss. To address this loss, central government came with GST compensation for 5 years. But 5 years is over. The apprehension is not completely addressed. The manufacturing states are not so happy with this GST regime. Right. Similarly, anything about GST will be discussed in GST Council. Decision will be taken in GST Council. In GST Council, you will have central government representatives, state government representatives. Right. This GST Council meeting is not happening frequently for the discussions. Even when the meeting is happening, here the decision will be taken through majority consensus, where differential voting weightage will be given. For center put together, we have 1/3 voting weightage. For states put together, we have 2/3 voting weightage. So center 1/3, state 2/3. So you might think that state has higher majority, but in reality, to take a decision in the GST Council, we need 3/4 majority. We need 3/4 majority. So state and center should come together, they have to cooperate and they have to take a decision. But however, many a times what happens, now center has 1/3 majority, right? So center has almost a veto power. If center says no for something, then that is not going to be executed, implemented. The state's interest can be compromised, right? So these are some issues. These are some issues which we are currently facing in this GST regime. So having a look at these issues, we might get a feeling that, okay, maybe GST is not so great. GST is not so good. But that is not the reality. That should not be the conclusion. GST is one of the most sought after important reform which India introduced. GST is not something which India has introduced. In 1950s, only France introduced for the first time. Now almost 160 plus countries have implemented GST or GST-like tax reforms. Right? See, yes, there are some issues. There are some issues. That issues doesn't make GST as a bad reform. These issues has to be addressed. The multiplicity of tax rates, that has to be addressed. No country other than India has these many tax rates. Right? Similarly, the tax rates is also slightly higher on certain products. Certain products, the GST tax rates are higher when compared to the previous tax regime. Now, on certain products, taxes are higher. For example, service tax. Before GST, it was 12%. Now it is 18% and 28%. On certain items, the tax rate is little high. That can be slightly rationalized. Right, I was mentioning about the tax refunds. The tax refunds can be made more seamless. The registration process can be made more easier. When GST Council is met frequently, right, the apprehensions of the states, when it is considered seriously, then the GST Council can become a real example for the cooperative federalism. See, we have this GST appellate tribunal. In GST Council, state, center, they are discussing if there is any issue, where we will go for appeal. There is GST appellate tribunal, which was introduced recently. But however, the appellate tribunal, the members are not appointed. So government should come up with, should speed up the process of appointments of the members of GST appellate tribunal for its effective functioning. So like this, government should address the issue. Removing GST is not a solution. We have to address these issues because GST is so potential. Government is getting huge revenue. With huge revenue, government can come up with various welfare measures. GST is improving ease of doing business. That is going to bring in lot of investments, job opportunities. Right? So what we need is some more tweaking in the GST. See, whenever something new is introduced, when old is getting replaced by new, that will be followed by crisis. Same thing everywhere in the world. You read the history. When old is getting replaced by new, it will be followed by some crisis. Because of the crisis, we should not scrap the new initiative. We have to address that crisis effectively. Right? By addressing the crisis, definitely. By bringing some small tweaking in the GST, by addressing the mentioned issues, GST will be a potential way for improving our economic growth, for improving the tax revenue, from improving the tax base. Right? So I hope you got some analytical clarity on this GST. We discussed about the positive impact, we discussed about the issues, we also discussed some suggestions. So based on our discussion, let me give you a question. Evaluate the impact of goods and services tax regime in India. Do you think GST is a necessity in India's economic framework? So it's a 15 marker question. So you have to write 250 words. So plan your answer accordingly. I hope this series is adding value to your preparation. I would love to hear your feedback in the comment section. Alright, so I will see you in another editorial analysis. Till then, bye. Take care.